Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Max Good, and he's just released an excellent documentary, which I watched in its entirety. Title of the documentary, which you can find on Amazon Prime, is The Assassination and Mrs. Paine. And I didn't know this aspect of the JFK. We were talking in the pre-show about some of the other interviewers who are much more expert than I am about the JFK situation, but I saw this coming out and I followed it and was very fortunate to watch it. It goes into detail, kind of like a side story that of this person who was involved at the JFK assassination and where Marina and Lee Harvey Oswald lived in Irving, Texas, leading up to the assassination. But what I'd like to do before I get started talking with Max is to run the trailer. So I'm going to pull the trailer up right here and see if I can get it to run. Let me turn off my audio. Let's see, share settings. All right.
This is the publicity clips. This is not the trailer.
Mrs. Ruth Paine probably knew the Lee Harvey Oswald family. Mrs. Ruth Paine probably knew the Lee Harvey Oswald family better than anybody living today. The fact that you sheltered the family of the accused assassin of a United States president, has this bothered you in any way? Has this changed your own personal life very much? Do you feel there is a lesson to be learned here out of the tragic events which have happened, and if so, what?
In a downtown building, a gunman waits at a sixth-floor window, a high-powered rifle by his side.
Ruth and Michael Paine are do-gooders whom nobody would have ever heard of if it hadn't been for the accident that one of the people they helped out in life was Lee Harvey Oswald.
I would say they were two of the most innocent people I ever met.
Ruth was completely candid with the FBI. I think most of the time she's telling the truth. But I think there's certain soft spots where she's lying because she has to. If you would really examine the Paines, who they really are, what they really did, you might find one of the real keys to the Kennedy case.
I will always have terrible, if only, feelings, along with many Secret Service men and many people of the nation, anyone who's ever had any contact with these people, say, if only I had done something.
This is all very, very close to me. I was there. And of course, my life turned upside down.
I think that's about all we'll watch. That's kind of the intro to this story. And Max has first person. He's interviewed them, but he can talk more about that. So Max Good, welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. Thanks for being on the show.
Great to be here, William. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, let me see.
And that was, can you hear me?
Audio, AirPods.
Can you hear me?
Do I have you muted? Are you muted? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I just played the first one. Okay. Let's see if I can get you back on. Check 1, 2.
Hello, I'm talking.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Start over again. Sorry about that.
All right, great to be here, William. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, that was the intro to the film that people just saw. And this project has been going on for 7 years. I've been working on this. And it started out as a 20-minute film I made when I was in grad school studying documentary, getting an MFA. And I was not an expert in the JFK assassination, but I had some interest. Friends of mine had told me things, and I had a friend who was a definite JFK researcher, and he pointed me to a book that came out in 2008 called JFK and the Unspeakable by James Douglas. If anybody wants to look that up on Amazon, you'll find it's got 5 stars and 1,500 reviews, and I think it's put out by Simon and Schuster or something. Very, very respectable, well-made book. And that book goes into the Paines for several pages, and I'd never heard of them before. And it was pretty intriguing. I didn't really know what to think, but it was all new to me that there were suspicions around Ruth and Michael Paine. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Paines were a couple in Irving, Texas, suburb of Dallas, and they befriended the Oswalds in the year before the assassination. And Marina Oswald lived at Ruth's house for the 2 months leading up to the assassination. And most of their belongings were stored there. Oswald didn't live there, but he spent the weekends at Ruth's house. He had a rooming house in Dallas where he stayed during the week. And Ruth was a very important witness for the Warren Commission. She answered more questions than any other witness. She answered over 5,000 questions. And a lot of people would say that the Paines knew the Oswalds better than anyone else in the world in the months leading up to the assassination.
And the Warren Commission, if I remember correctly, they went to her house in Irving and checked everything out and talked to her there, just trying to get information. I think one of the guys who was on the Warren Commission went out there too. So she was a very important person. And how did your research and background leading up to this documentary? Can you talk about the research you did and how that progressed? Because you went and talked. She was in Northern California, right?
Yeah, she's still in Northern California. I reached out to her over email. Once I found out that she lived pretty close to me up here. I live in the Bay Area. She's in Santa Rosa. It's about an hour away. I thought somebody's got to interview her about this and see if all these suspicions are true or what she has to say about it. It's just a fascinating story that we have somebody who's still alive, who's accused of possibly playing some role, whatever that means, or holding some secrets up to the present day. And I really didn't know what to think. I went into the project with an open mind. I wanted to hear both sides and be as factual as possible. And I want also to be respectful to Ruth, and because I know there's a lot of trash talking about her online. And whatever you think about her, she's been through quite a lot with this. It must be quite a burden having this event tied to you for the rest of history.
Right. One of the interesting things I found about her, she doesn't shy away from interviews, right? So she talks. She's very voluble. Like, she's a very verbal person. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I didn't know that going in, but I found out pretty quickly that she's been interviewed many, many times, usually around every 10 years, for the 20th anniversary, 30th, 40th, 50th, they would interview her, or any big production about the assassination. She's one of the go-to voices, one of the go-to talking heads that would be interviewed. And she's very articulate, very clear, and she seems to take it on as her responsibility to tell her story, even up until now. I mean, she's turning 90 years old this year, and I think she's still doing appearances and talks, and still willing to talk about all this.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. And can you talk what it was like visiting her? I know you used to have scenes of the old folks home. What was it like, kind of just going to see this? She's kind of like a living legend in an odd way. So, can you talk about what it was like interviewing her? And her husband was, I think he passed away in 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the first time I went to visit her up there at the retirement home where she lives, um, I was really surprised to find that her former husband, Michael Paine, who's also part of the story, he was living at the same retirement home. He had just moved in, and I think he was starting to experience some dementia or loss of memory, but he was still pretty coherent when I talked to him, and I got to interview him once. But it's an interesting scene up there. She lives in a Quaker retirement home, very anti-war activist kind of demographic there with the Quakers. If people know about the American Friends Service Committee and the Quakers' commitment to peace, a lot of Quakers are very involved in left wing and anti-war activism, and Ruth and other people there would fit that description. Yeah, it was very, very wholesome, sweet scene there, and kind of in some ways contradicts what you might see about her being this possible CIA agent, or some people think it's just a cover, or some people speculate she's still doing some sort of espionage work on the old retired activists up there.
Wow.
Who knows?
And that's the whole thing. So she, like, politically is on the left. So she's anti-war. She's educated too, right? She went to Antioch College, and she writes and talks very well. Like, I was impressed. Like, even she's sharp. I think she's sharp.
She's extremely sharp, and even at her age, she remembers everything perfectly. You almost never hear her stumble while she's talking. And she went to college, and later on in life, she got a master's degree in child psychology, and she worked in schools as a counselor, and I think she was a principal of a school at some point. So yeah, she's a very intelligent woman, and I told her from the beginning that I wanted to explore these accusations around her and give her a chance to respond to it all. And I think the film does that, and people can make up their own minds what they think is true.
And you had some notable researchers, different types of people. Like, I read through this book trying to get a grip on this whole situation. This book is called Mrs. Paine's Garage. You had Thomas Mallon, Jim DiEugenio, Bill Simpich, if I remember his name off the top of my head. But some of these other characters, can you talk, or JFK experts, you were willing to get a wide range of opinions for this film. Can you talk about some of those researchers and what it was like reaching out to them as well?
Yeah, so I tried to get an interview with Thomas Mallon. He's the author of the only book on Ruth herself, and he's coming from a clear official story perspective, and Ruth is completely innocent. He sort of laughs off all the suspicions, and I tried to get an interview, but he wasn't interested. But I interviewed many of the top researchers: Jim DiEugenio, Gary Aguilar, Bill Simpich, Martin Schatz, Vince Salandria. And on the official story side, we had Ruth herself. We had Priscilla Johnson McMillan, Gerald Posner, and Max Holland. And these are all names that'll be familiar to people who have read about the case. And so, yeah, it's the film is kind of a unique window on the assassination through the story of Ruth Paine, and the questions of whether she could have been involved, she could hold some secrets, who knows? And the people who say she's completely innocent, of course, are generally on the official story side of things, and those who think she could be holding some secrets are the more conspiratorial minded.
She kind of, it's an odd kind of she has an interesting background. Her and her husband are really kind of East New England Brahmins, blue bloods, their heritage. You go into that in the movie. Can you talk about their background and their relationship? Because it was off and on too, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. At the time around the assassination, Ruth and her husband Michael were actually separated, so Michael wasn't living at the house. And very small house they lived in a working class suburb of Irving, Texas. It's a museum now, and you can visit it. They put everything back in the period style and furniture. I recommend it if anybody's in the Dallas area to check it out. Yeah, Michael Paine, curiously, he is a member of the Forbes family from Massachusetts. His mother was also named Ruth Forbes. And he actually, if you trace his ancestry, he's got some of the top Boston Brahmin families in his lineage. That's like the Cabots, the Emersons, the Paines. They trace their ancestry back to somebody who signed this Declaration of Independence. And Michael's father is actually, Michael's great grandfather is Ralph Waldo Emerson, a famous writer, philosopher in American history. So yeah, they're curious people. Ruth also comes from a pretty well-to-do, established family. Her parents met at Stanford. Her dad was a insurance executive and also worked for USAID, which is the Agency for International Development, which is well known to be a cover for CIA agents.
Like Intel, Global International Intel. How did Ruth Paine get to Irving? I don't. I know how Oswald got there, but I don't know how she ended up there.
Yeah. Well, they moved to Irving so that Michael could take a job at Bell Helicopter. And he got the job at Bell Helicopter because his stepfather, his mother's second husband, was a man named Arthur Young. And he is actually the inventor of one of the first commercially successful helicopters. He invented what became the Bell 47 helicopter. That's the helicopter you see in MASH with the bubble. So this guy was a very successful inventor. Came from a wealthy family, lived in suburban Philadelphia. So Michael Paine was able to get a job at Bell Helicopter through this connection, and he worked there for a number of years. And he actually had did have a security clearance at this helicopter company, which was a major military contractor. They also produced the UH-1 Huey helicopter, famous in the Vietnam War.
Like that was the main helicopters were used in Vietnam, came out of Bell, if my memory serves me correct. So huge amounts of money.
Yeah, the Paines obviously could have afforded to have lived in any house they wanted, but they were living in this very modest 2-bedroom house in Irving.
Very middle class. I mean, I would call it, even to this day, very middle class, which is kind of curious considering their background. I think I read that he inherited, I think at the time in the 60s, like $500,000, like a significant amount of money or something. Isn't that right?
He had a trust fund. He had a trust fund. I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but definitely something around there. And I think I read somewhere that the house they lived in was worth about $5,000 at the time. So to give you a sense of how much a house cost back then.
Sense of how much, again, they weren't in the most expensive housing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really remarkable. And so really the key, so much of the background of Oswald's supposed motive can be traced through that house, right? Like the gun, letters, things like that.
Yeah. So the Oswald's possessions, most of them were stored in this house in the garage. Ruth, the Oswalds were living in New Orleans for a while. A couple months before the assassination, they were in New Orleans, and at a certain point, Ruth drove down to New Orleans and picked Marina and all their belongings up and brought them all back to Irving, Texas. And that's where Marina was up until the assassination. But yeah, a lot of important evidence was found there. The backyard photos of Oswald with the rifle and the pistol and the communist newspapers were found in the house. The gun was allegedly stored in that house, and Oswald is said to have taken it that morning with him to work. And, the Fair Play for Cuba flyers, Oswald's, some of his cameras, and a few other interesting items that Ruth even played a pretty intimate role in discovering some of this evidence. Yeah.
It was the one about the general, right? General Walker. Like that's what tied, it was the only piece of evidence that tied Oswald to the attempted murder or assassination of Walker, I think in April of 1963 or something like that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So for people who don't know about the Walker shooting, that there was a supposed attempted assassination of General Edwin Walker, a few months before the assassination. And he was a prominent right-winger at the time, segregationist, kind of, stirring up a lot of trouble. And he was sort of an enemy of the Kennedys. So after the assassination, they pinned that attempted assassination on Oswald. And one of the main pieces of evidence, not the Olding one, but one of the main ones was this note that Oswald supposedly wrote to Marina on the night he went to go shoot Walker. And this note wasn't actually found in the initial police searches of Ruth Paine's house. A week or so after the assassination, Ruth handed over a book of Marina's that I guess they they forgot to take to the Secret Service. And in that book, this is the story, they found this note. And they came back to Ruth and said, did you write this? Is this yours? Whose handwriting is this? And she said she didn't know. But yeah, this note is very controversial. There are people who will tell you this. The note doesn't mention Walker specifically, and who knows where it came from. But yeah, it's a very key piece of evidence, because for the Warren Commission, establishing that Oswald was capable of trying to assassinate somebody is huge towards showing that he could have killed Kennedy, and he had the mindset to do that. So even to this day, you'll hear people say, "Oh, he shot at Walker, so he must have killed Kennedy." It makes sense,
Right. So it's a continuum of his aggressive activities, right? That's the establishment. Like he's a far leftist, fair play for Cuba, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, they don't quite make sense politically. I mean, Walker's an arch right winger, enemy of Kennedy, and then you could say he just wanted to kill somebody famous, but ideologically, it doesn't make sense for him to try to kill Walker and then to kill Kennedy.
And right, it does, because it's right. There's a left and right. What was it like, kind of producing or putting together this film? Like I think you crowdfunded this, right?
Yeah. So I made the 20-minute film back in 2015, and I knew right away that this needed to be a feature length. There was just too much to the story to tell in 20 minutes. So I continued doing more interviews, and I did a Kickstarter campaign in 2017, and raised some money. Never raised that much money. I mean, this is a grassroots effort, and completely independent. There's no commercial money, no foundation money that made this happen. It was, the few, core of supporters who donated money, and some private people who came along here and there and chipped in a little bit, and me, and working on it mostly myself for 7 years.
Congratulations. Really interesting. Like, it really goes in detail, and seeing these people's face to face and stuff really kind of puts the JFK assassinate death in context. It's still going on. There's issues with the evidence. They're blocking evidence today. They're keeping stuff hidden. So it's still an important issue. People are still talking about it. People are still writing books. There's a huge industry or set of researchers, people still researching it. So it's still really fascinating. What was your kind of impression like when you talk with her? I guess you just lead it up to the audience. I mean, she's pretty remarkable in the fact that she's so lucid still. She's 90. I mean, I'm surprised. Were you surprised that she agreed to be on tape? Like, how much time did you really spend with her to get the stuff you put into the documentary?
Well, yeah, at first I was surprised that she agreed to do it, and then I realized that she just likes to share her story with almost anybody who asks. There was a little documentary about her that came out in 2013, some local production in Dallas, but it didn't even go into the questions around her at all. And that's the most fascinating part of this story. And I think Ruth herself understands that. So yeah, she was 82 when I first started interviewing her. And probably the last time I filmed her was 2019 or something. She was 87. And probably interviewed her, filmed with her on 4 or 5 occasions over those years. And yeah, she was always sharp, and I'm sure she still is. And she's. I asked her the tough questions. I thought I really had to, for history's sake, to ask her about these suspicions. And she's I don't know if she ever got really flustered about anything. She's very, very cool-headed and well-spoken.
And she had 2 young children at the time the assassination took place. Whatever happened to her children? Are you aware of that?
Yeah. Well, the children, I mean, I guess they deserve some privacy, but I did reach out to them. I tried to talk to both of them, and so I spoke to her daughter on the phone, and she kind of laughed off all the suspicions about Ruth and the whole conspiracy idea. But yeah, they're interesting. They're around. Yeah,
they support their mom. You think?
Yes, definitely. There's a story floating around online about her daughter having some falling out with Ruth over this, but I don't know. I tried to verify that with the daughter, and she said it wasn't true.
And what happened with the relationship between her and Marina? I found it very unnerving that she just happened to know Russian too. Like Paine was studying Russian, Marina shows up, they're talking Russian, and what happened with them in the end? I mean, Marina Oswald's opinion kind of changed, right?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that Ruth gave for wanting to befriend Marina Oswald and invite her to live in her house was that she wanted to learn Russian, or practice her Russian. She began studying Russian in the 50s. And so she already was able to speak with the Oswalds in Russian. Yeah, some people find that suspicious. Who knows? But yeah, Ruth was a Russian speaker, and she says that she wanted to learn Russian so she could help ease tensions and have dialogue with the Soviet Union during the Cold War as a Quaker.
And there were some issues I think you talk about some of these people who said that she was involved in some of these left-wing movements, but they were suspicious of her outside of the JFK assassination, right?
Yeah. So later on in the late 80s, early 90s, Ruth was involved with some activism with the Quakers in Nicaragua, and that was during the time of the Sandinista revolution and the Iran-Contra affair. And the story that I've heard is that some of these people who were involved down there, they're very cautious about CIA infiltration of their activities, because they were supporting the poor people down there who were aligned with the Sandinistas, and the CIA's down there supporting the Contras and trying to overthrow this populist revolution. So some of these people were suspicious of Ruth because of her actions down there. I guess she was taking notes, taking photos, and there was even a story that they visited some Sandinista affiliated village or people, and then soon after they visited them, like somebody was killed, like somebody was informed on. So who knows? There's those are suspicions that Ruth was some sort of CIA asset for a very long time. That people suspect she could have started as a CIA asset as far back as the late 50s, when she was doing this work with the Quakers. She was part of a pen pal program. It was called the East-West Contacts Committee, and they were writing letters back and forth between young Soviets and Americans, and they even brought some Soviet students over to the U.S. to visit. And some people suspect that a program like that might have been monitored or somehow affiliated with the CIA or some sort of intelligence operation.
Right. There's just so much suspicions around her. It's really something else. John B. asks, this is for you, Max, as a psychologist, did Paine have contact with Jolly West? I don't know if you're familiar with who Jolly West is. He was the psychologist for Jack Ruby, who popped into that trial. Have you ever heard of any contacts between her and Jolly West?
No, I haven't. I don't think Ruth acted in any official capacity as a psychologist during the JFK case. She did act as Marina's interpreter during some important interviews, and even when the police first came to the house, Ruth was acting as Marina's interpreter.
Right, and you go into detail. There's a lot of interviews. There's a lot of first-person stuff. So you've done the legwork of going to interview her, seeing her at the retirement home, and really a great job. And I learned a lot just watching the documentary. Max, is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed? I mean, can you talk about what else people can expect to see in the documentary, and where can they watch it?
Yeah, the documentary is packed full of information, and a lot of these questions I go into detail, and you'll find out more about Ruth Paine's family and some of their intelligence connections. Yeah, I think everybody should watch the film. I tried not to be heavy-handed in any way, and I really want the audience to go through a process of critical thinking and deciding where they think the truth lies. I don't want to hit people over the head or be too biased in any way. So I try to be as factual as I could. Yeah, I think a lot of people are recognizing that. I'm getting a lot of great feedback. I think this movie, it's meant to also reach younger audiences. I thought this sort of true crime angle of the questions around Ruth Paine might appeal to people who might normally not be interested in a JFK assassination documentary.
Did you ever hear the rumor that she was the one who picked up Oswald from the book depository because her car matched the description? I have heard that. Have you ever heard that? Okay.
So there was a report that some witness saw Oswald get into a station wagon, and one of the police officers brought that up to Oswald, and he said something like, "This is all, this is the report. Who knows what really happened?" But Oswald said, "That's Ruth Paine's car. Leave her out of this," or something. I don't know. That's all speculation. Who knows what happened? But yeah, there are tons of of little details that Ruth is involved with, and you know, if you're curious, there a lot of it's in the film, and there's even more stuff that I couldn't fit in the film. So yeah, she's a fascinating window on the assassination. I think everybody should know her story.
I agree. Great job on the film. Where's the best place for people to watch it?
Well, you can watch it on iTunes, Amazon, Vimeo, Google Play, whatever you want to use is fine. And you can check out our website, jfkpaine.com,
which you can see on YouTube right now if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, and I post a lot on Twitter. We have a Facebook group, and I'm always happy to answer questions. And
great.
Yeah.
So people can contact you through that website too, right? jfkpaine.com, right? Max Good?
Yes, that's right.
So it's Max Good at Twitter, jfk.com. You can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the links to take wherever choice you want to watch the film: Apple iTunes, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Vimeo on demand. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up the discussion?
I think that's it. Any other questions, anybody? No?
Anybody? Just really where they can watch the documentary. Highly recommended. I watched it in its entirety. Really fascinating, and gives another angle, another facet into the JFK situation. So again, the title of the film is The Assassination and Miss Paine, and the director and producer is Max Good. So Max Good, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the completion of your project.
Thanks a lot for having me.
All right, take care. Have a great one.
Bye.
Stay there.